Good morning, and thanks for joining us here on The Real Story. I'm Emma Woolforst. We want to start this morning by taking a moment to remember a trailblazer for women's rights and equality. Ellen Ash Peters, the first woman to serve as Chief Justice of the Connecticut State Supreme Court, passed away this week. She was 94 years old. During her law career, Peters was the first female faculty member at Yale Law. She was appointed to the state Supreme Court in 1978 by then Governor Ella Grasso and served as Chief Justice from 1984 to 1996. In her final year, Peters wrote the majority opinion in the state Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Sheff versus O'Neill, declaring segregation of Hartford area schools to be unconstitutional. In a statement this week, Governor Ned Lamont said that her service is to be emulated, and she will be remembered for her intelligence, her tenacity, and her remarkable fortitude. Certainly a legacy. And joining us now, another judicial giant here in Connecticut, Attorney General William Tong. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So you've been really busy lately. I feel like we have a lot to catch up on here. I want to start with this. You know, we're less than a month away from the end of the legislative session here. There's been a lot of major issues discussed, from housing to healthcare costs and access to, new technology and social media. We see rallies, potential new laws, but why for you and your office is litigation so important in addressing these issues and enforcing either current laws or what might be new laws by the end of the session?
So first of all, I'm wearing my special back-to-back gear for you today, so go Huskies.
Yes.
And let me also just say what a huge loss for the state.
Absolutely.
But Justice Peters did so much, opened so many doors.
Yeah.
We literally stand on her shoulders. And she wrote that majority opinion in Sheff versus O'Neill. In my first term as Attorney General, we settled that case more than 30 years later. So it all comes full circle.
Absolutely.
And thanks for that question about litigation. Litigation can be a powerful tool. Lawsuits can be a powerful tool. But I often say that lawsuits are not a good way to make policy, and they're maybe not the best choice. They may be our only choice. On so many of these issues, like the cost of prescription drugs, protecting kids from the harms of social media. These are fights that we would normally in a different time expect Congress to take up, for example,
Sure.
and to fight those fights for us down in Washington. But I don't have to tell you and the viewers that it's tough in Washington right now, even though our delegation works really hard and is very effective. It's tough for Congress to discharge its basic responsibilities. And so because of that, those fights devolve to the states, the original building blocks of our country. And so Senator Blumenthal, when he was Attorney General, he was a pioneer. Actually, the late Senator Lieberman, as we continue to mourn his loss here in Connecticut, another giant in our state's legal community. They built this model where the states come together, state AGs come together to fight these battles. And I'm just stepping into those shoes and picking up on that legacy.
So we hear all the time about settlements and payments that sometimes come out of these cases. And while there's a lot of power in those demands, when it comes to the money, how important is it for your office to ensure that that money's getting into the right hands? Think the opioid settlement, recently. What does that work look like?
So that's incredibly important. We've talked about our work on opioids. When I became Attorney General, we'd sued a few companies. We'd sued Purdue Pharma and the Sacklers. But we hadn't recovered any money. And now, 6 years later, it's hard to believe I'm in my 6th year as Attorney General. 6 years later, we've recovered more than $50 billion from the opioid and addiction industry. This is the second largest cash settlement in American history on a multi-state case. And most of that money is going into treatment, prevention, and addiction science. Right. And we wanted to make sure that money went into helping people in our state deal with addiction, avoid addiction, keeping kids safe, and keeping families from joining, unfortunately, this club of people that has lost so much, and through which we've lost, more than 1,500 people every year on average, and more than $10 billion in economic damage every year.
And going back to what you said about kind of this, state versus federal, as well as states coming together, a lot of controversial decisions people hear about, whether it's, abortion or gun control, on the federal or Supreme Court level, sometimes go against state laws. As Connecticut's constitutional officer, what do you tell people who might be concerned about what the state either protects or prohibits might be challenged or overturned then on a federal level?
What they should know is that we're fighting for them every single day. And Connecticut, as the sovereign state of Connecticut, we're one of 50 states joined in the federal government, but Connecticut retained, our rights and our prerogative to have our own state laws. So we here in Connecticut believe in the right to an abortion and a woman's right to decide what happens to her own body. I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that that continues to be the law of our land here in Connecticut. We have decided, because we are speaking of clubs of people, we're members of the worst club imaginable, and that those are the states and communities that have suffered the most from gun violence, right? And we lost 26 beautiful souls in Newtown more than 10 years ago. Nobody wants to be a member of this club, by the way, but unfortunately we are, and we decided that we want to keep people here in Connecticut safe from gun violence. I'm going to fight tooth and nail, no matter what the Supreme Court says, to protect our gun laws and keep people safe here in Connecticut. We're on offense every single day on those rights, the right to an abortion, the rights of women, civil rights for all people here in Connecticut, the right to be safe from gun violence, and we're going to be successful in those lawsuits.
And so, right now, another example is the marijuana market. We know you've worked to regulate Connecticut's legalization, but there's a case right now trying to negate Connecticut's right to legalize it at all. So, tell me a little bit about what's going on with that. So,
Connecticut, of course, lawfully created a regulated adult use cannabis market, but we designed a system that works for Connecticut, that keeps cannabis limited, and cannabis use and sales limited to adults, 21 and over, and we want to keep products away from kids. Everyone agrees on that. And the requirements to participate in the adult use cannabis market, to sell products, are strict and highly regulated. And it's because the legislature wanted to create a regulated market that we could control and we could tax and we could make sure would be safe for everybody. So it's my job to make sure that everybody follows the rules. Because we have adult use cannabis in Connecticut doesn't mean you can do whatever the heck you want. It doesn't mean you can sell whatever you want, right? We're so concerned about fentanyl and xylazine and products that are untested and unsafe, and that's why I'm on broadcast stations like this one across Connecticut right now, warning parents about bootleg, counterfeit products that are untested and unsafe, and making sure that it doesn't fall in the hands of their kids.
Another big issue right now, of course, climate change. As climate change, is really new, the effects, we're already seeing them right now, and the state legislature felt like they didn't get enough done last session, so they're really trying, to push for it this session. A lot have said that, the state is kind of playing catch up. When it comes to that, we've seen this push for some constitutional amendments this legislative session. One is a proposal to called the Green Amendment to, make residents have a constitutional right to be environmentally protected by the state. We've also seen one about ranked choice voting and, another about the right to an abortion, solidifying that in the state constitution. I think sometimes when people see this coming up on their ballot, they might not necessarily know what that means. We've seen this happening in other states. What are your thoughts about giving this kind of potential constitutional litigation power to residents? Because the pushback against that is that this could open up the state to a lot of new lawsuits.
Yeah, so this is an often or well-used process to amend our Constitution. It's pretty strict, and it's a pretty high bar in order to get a question on the ballot for people to decide. One of the challenges is making sure the question is is worded well and clear, and we've had some challenges with that before.
Early voting.
Yeah. So this is up to the legislature, and there are lots of smart people in the legislature, lots of lawyers who are working on it now, and I'll leave it to the legislature to get those questions on the ballot or not. But this is a good example. Climate change is a good example of what I said earlier. In a different time, you might have expected Congress to act on climate change and do more to protect us from a changing environment. But of course, it's really hard for them to do that, which is why I've sued ExxonMobil, which is why the states have had to step in and say ExxonMobil lied to us about the effects of climate change. They lied to us about the fact of climate change. They knew about it, and we're going to hold them accountable and make them pay money to help us deal with climate change.
One of those other, big industries is tech.
Yeah.
You've been doing a lot with different, tech lawsuits. You've teamed up with state and federal lawmakers, as you said, what the state can do while waiting for the feds to potentially try and do something. But you've teamed up to talk specifically about youth and social media, and then, go after some of these companies. So let's start first with Meta.
Yeah. So when I got reelected in 2022, I said that in this next term, we would focus on the big tech companies and the many ways in which we rely on, we use, we love, we depend on technology. It's really changed our lives. But because we depend on it and because these forces, these companies are so big, so powerful, so dominant, it's important for me to protect people from the harms of those products, of those companies, and the ways that they might take advantage of us. So Meta is a good example. Meta owns Facebook and Instagram. I maybe, being 50 years old, maybe I'm the Facebook generation, but my kids never touch Facebook. They're all about Instagram. Meta's got us all covered, and Meta has extraordinary power.
Right.
And what we have found and we know is that Meta purposefully tries to get kids, young people, onto their platform, even kids that aren't supposed to be on their platform, 13 and under, and it targets them and gets them addicted to social media. So I'll give you an example. A technology known as infinite scrolling. Back in the old days, in the stone ages of the internet, you had to click through page by page by page. But now you can just scroll and scroll and scroll. Infinite scrolling was developed, obviously, by a technologist and a programmer, and he called it behavioral cocaine.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They know it's addictive, right? And the way they make money is the more of us who look at our devices and can't separate from our devices, and the more young people that get on their devices, the more money they make.
Right.
And we know that content on social media can be harmful, particularly for young people and young women, and it can lead to bad self-image, it can lead to depression, self-harm, and worse. And we just want that to stop.
And this technology is always evolving and changing, and something that I think has really popped up in the past couple years is AI and how that's been leading to sometimes scams and deep fakes. We've also heard a lot about ChatGPT. AI can be a big, scary thing to many. Some are also trying to use it as a tool in a good way, but Connecticut has been called out for being behind the ball a little bit. The legislature's working on that this session. You've been working on deep fakes and scams, right?
Yeah. So we're always trying to protect people from scams, and no doubt technology and AI has changed the landscape. I often talk to groups.
You need T-Mobile home internet with 5G.
Wait, T-Mobile has home internet?
What a feeling to have T-Mobile now.
And often groups of seniors and older Americans here in Connecticut. And some people say, I like to stay on the phone with the scammers and scam them back. I like to play with them. And what I've been saying to people is, please don't do that, right? Because while you're on the phone, the scammers are doing something in the background, either trying to hack into your technology, or they're just recording your voice, a simple yes or no, right? And using that with AI and deepfake technology to maybe mimic your voice in gaining access to to your accounts or to perpetrate a scam against somebody that you know and love.
Right.
And so I give people pointers, for example. We talk a lot about the grandparent scam where older Americans get a call and someone says, I know your grandson or your granddaughter, or it's your grandson or your granddaughter, and I'm in trouble and I need you to wire me money.
Right.
And sometimes that, that can work because you target somebody who's feeling vulnerable and they think their grandson or granddaughter is in trouble. They may end up paying money, right, in a panic. And so one pointer that I've been giving people is come up with a code word. So, at the next family get-together, come up with a code word. Maybe it's Fox 61, whatever it is, right? And so someone can call and say, Grandma, it's Emma, Fox 61, and you'll know that it's actually Emma, or at least you'll have a fighting chance at it not being a scam.
Right. No, that's a great point. And when we're talking about, this technology and these companies, you've been at it as well with Apple. We were talking about Meta and apps. You showed your device.
Yeah.
I mean,
2 phones. This is the work phone. This is the personal phone.
I have 2 as well, a work and a personal phone. A lot of people have Apple and a lot of different Apple devices. And, the Justice Department is suing for, monopoly of the tech business market, as we said. A lot of people have Apple. A lot of people have Samsung, Android versus Apple, it seems. Some people may think, well, everyone has Apple. What's the big deal if that's the case? Why is it such a priority for you to go after the big companies who are dominating these markets and industries?
So these are great. I'm a big Apple fan,
Sure.
and I'm dependent on these devices.
Right.
And because of that, because they make great products, they control 75% of the performance smartphone market, which is all the smartphones, by the way. So they control basically the whole smartphone market, or the lion's share of it. And what they do is, it's okay to make great products. It's okay to have so many customers. It's okay to have big market share. It's not okay, to then take that power to try to hurt your competitors and restrict choice for consumers. So what ends up happening is we all buy these phones. And if you want to send a text to your friend who's an Android user, you get the green bubble, right? And have you noticed that sometimes those texts don't go through, or the video that you send isn't as good as between iPhone users, right? They also make it hard for programmers to offer alternatives, for example, to the Apple Wallet. You've got to use the Apple Wallet. And what ends up happening is, because they tie us all together and we become captive to this overall Apple ecosystem, what antitrust lawyers like me call it is a competitive moat. They build a moat around us so that we can't use other products. So there's heavy disincentives to buying a different smartwatch, for example, than the Apple Watch. And so if you don't do that and then you stay inside of this competitive moat, the other term that antitrust lawyers use is then we pay monopoly rents, right? We pay for the monopoly. And so if I have to replace this phone and get a top of the line iPhone 15 with all the functionality, what's that, $1,600?
Right.
That's monopoly rent right there. You're paying Apple because they've built this moat around us. It's okay to sell great products. It's not okay to break the law, and I have to hold them accountable.
And along the lines of, consumer protection as well, outside of tech, explain to me what the new response has been to travel troubles and airline complaints lately.
So if I had a dollar for every call that I get about airlines and travel snafus, not just in COVID, by the way, it spiked during COVID, but we've gotten hundreds of calls about airlines. And I suspect you and many of your viewers have experienced the same thing I have. I got stranded, for example, in Milwaukee. I was there for an AG trip, and they canceled my flight late in the evening. I had to scramble to get a hotel room and pay for a taxi or an Uber to get over there and back, and cancel my whole day the next day because I was traveling. And I'm lucky, right? I can afford to get a hotel room. I had the ability to cancel my appointments in the morning so I could get back. A lot of people don't have that ability. A lot of people don't have the extra $200 or $300 to pay to stay the night, and they're sleeping on the floor in the airport, or you're stranded and you're in a city where you don't know anybody and there's no flight to get out. What are you supposed to do then? And so when people would call us in the past, we would try to help them. We would call the airlines, and sometimes they would be cooperative, but sometimes they would say, hey, this is a federal matter. We're regulated by DOT, and take a hike.
Right.
But this change now is a huge deal. It's a big deal for Connecticut travelers. We went to the Department of Transportation and Secretary Buttigieg, and we said, this is what the airlines are telling us. And Secretary Buttigieg said, fine, I'll deputize you, attorneys general. I'll give you my authority to go after the airlines. And so now I step into their shoes. I can investigate the airlines. I can push them really hard. And if they don't play ball and make it right and take care of Connecticut travelers when they've done something wrong, I can escalate with the DOT and take legal action.
And so, unfortunately, we could keep talking about so much more. But really quickly, last 30 seconds here, we just ended on talking about complaints and how that has really turned into action, more powers for you now for the state. So much of what you do comes from people's complaints. What should they know if they want to tell the Attorney General's office about something?
So they should go to my website, ct.gov/AG complaints.
Perfect.
And fill out a complaint. I need people to fill out the complaint form because I need details, right? A quick tweet or X or whatever, or a quick social media message doesn't give me enough to go on. I need them to fill out the complaint form.
Perfect. We'll have that link on our website as well. Attorney General, great to talk with you. Thank you as always for giving us some time.
Thanks.
Well, there's still more to come here, though, on The Real Story. We're breaking